Thank you so much, Dr. Rene, for joining us on a podcast at Dawdle. Extremely grateful that you took out time to share your insights with our global audience. Just to promote Dawdle a bit, now our global community is 125,000 plus CXOs and senior leaders from across the globe. And we are extremely happy that people like you are joining us to share your insights with this community. We welcome you, ma'am. And we have quite a bit of interesting topics to discuss with you. But before we go there, would love to understand and listen to your journey so far.
Thanks, Rishikesh. It's a pleasure being here. So I have heard about Dharmil and then I watched a couple of your podcasts as well. They are really amazing. There are learnings to take away from that. So I come from a very small town, but if you have known my profile, I've continuously skilled myself and then gotten an array of degrees. For me, that was required for me to move up in the career ladder for somebody who comes from a very small town, right? So based on that, whatever journey that I have gone through, I started with QA, then moved to engineering, and then become an engineering leader and global leader. And I've seen a lot of things over the past 25 years for me to see like where tech was and where it is today. And one thing earlier, those days it used to be like, okay, every month tech changes. Here it is like every second, every nanosecond, something is changing. So you have to be continuously learning for you to be relevant to the industry, right? So that becomes very, very important. If you have to be in tech, then you have to know tech, understand tech. And especially if you are leading teams, you better be hands-on. Otherwise, it's not going to be very helpful for you to build teams or build products or even understand customers and deliver what they want and to their satisfaction, right? So that is what I have been doing for the past 25 years. So we can start.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for running us through your experience. So you have spent years leading engineering at top global firms like IBM. Before founding Top Grep Tech. What is that specific gap or pain point did you observe, either in how software was being built or how engineers were being trained, that made you decide to start this?
We all started in some college when we met to do it at least here. That is, and these days people without degrees also know how to code, right? One thing what I have always seen is coding is very different from engineering. And then coding and engineering, you need a level of quality to it, right? So I always saw that quality engineering is one level above engineering because you will be factoring for scale, you will be factoring for quality, you will be factoring for security, you will be factoring for cost and everything. So this is something I have learned. If you don't do it well, then it's going to come back and bite in whatever form that it is going to come and bite. So even if you're building a small MVP, it is better to bake in certain things of these factors into it so that you don't have to completely be doing it from the scratch, right? At least whatever customers that you have gotten in, you would be able to sustain them while you're building or refactoring or even developing from the scratch. So even to hold the not so good things are also there. So everything is a learning point. And when you start as a junior, I have always seen when we have hired either freshers or lateral engineers, anytime a person comes in, it's a new learning for them to build it, right? So what we have seen is it takes anywhere 3 years for somebody to understand who's new, for them to understand what is happening in this company end to end. And for a lateral entry, it takes few months for them to understand because they come with a certain kind of learning. So we wanted to accelerate. For example, in colleges, we wrote programs. We have never seen applications being written. Even today, when we go to colleges, we see the same state, same books that we have studied 30 years ago are being still taught, right? So when they come here, they don't know how to, they do have potential, but how do we accelerate it? So if you give an intern to a person in a project, it takes anywhere about 4 to 6 months to 8 months to 12 months, depending on where they start, to put in their first code into production, right? They would be doing like individual projects which are not part of the core product for them to get trained and then to put on the live systems. So that is what we want to accelerate. So that is why we took those points and then I thought, okay, somebody should do something about it. So I thought I will do it and start a Top Grep.
AI
iVagam.
iVagam. Yes. And this is positioned as an AI powered hands-on labs platform that makes teams deployment ready within weeks. Can you take us inside its design philosophy? How did you balance simulation, automation, and real world complexity while keeping it lightweight and instantly deployable?
Okay. So this is something I always had in my mind. And one of my USP is to make sure the essence gets crammed up to the top. Right. So, how do we translate that essence into something tangible? Over the period of years, I know what is missing. Now, how do we build it? For example, there are a lot of edtech platforms that are there which offer you video courses. Right. So, those videos you will have to set up on your own. And if there is any problem with that, who's going to help you? And by the time you finish, like feature parity for us to build. So what we did was we had designed the curriculum. We had designed how the classes have to happen, and we did physical batches first. When we did the physical batches, we understood the problem. For example, 1 to 16 years same sat in the same class, depending on the topic that you are taking, right? And what happened was some of the quality engineers wanted to become developers, so we took some of the classes for them. For some of the manual test engineers, the functional test engineers, they wanted to learn automation, so we started somewhere and we did different classes to experiment. What is it that people allows people to continue learning and then master it, right? Also, we found a few points. One is some people are working, so they brought in laptops. It is a company laptop where something is installed on their machines, where they cannot install anything else. It prevents them. Monitoring systems are there. And when somebody who doesn't have a job comes in, they have a very low quality laptop, which is very slow. You can't install, not connecting to Wi-Fi. And then they are in poor Wi-Fi locations. They can't, or they are traveling, doing something and then attending class. Second, the other thing that we found out was people are not punctual to the class. If you come in like 30 minutes late, you're not going to understand anything because we are doing hands-on sessions. And in the Zoom, we are creating group and the breakout rooms for helping people to debug, right? 30 minutes later, if you join, you're not going to understand anything. Similarly, if you don't attend 2-3 classes, then you come on the next day, you're not going to understand. So we did classes in the afternoon for people to come in so that they can catch up on the next class. But when a person is alone, they are not willing to learn because it's very boring one-on-one to do. In a sense, the morning teacher would be the same person who is doing this. And let's say today morning there was some other teacher and some other teacher would be taking the class in the afternoon. Most of the guys whomever who took the classes and all, we only have trained them how to do it, and they have attended classes with us and they also started taking classes. They are very good guys. They are developers actually. So the classes these were some of the things. One is they don't want to spend, they cannot do the setup, they are not punctual, or they are not regular to the classes. So this is something. And then when it becomes a little complicated, people who are starting with the fundamentals, they want to drop out because they did not expect this to become much complicated, or they want to practice the first one for again and then come back to the second class. Because in a class you will be free flowing in the one chapter to next chapter to third chapter, right? But they want to practice the first one. How do you allow them to practice? So these were some of the fundamental things that we wanted to ensure. If a person wants to practice, they can practice. There should be zero setup because by the time the setup completes, people are tired and they get scared. There's so many things. Oh, folder structure, tree structure, which file should go where. They are totally confused. And the other thing is that they have laptop issues. So we wanted to make sure it is a browser-based solution. At the same time, we know in education is either in corporates is a low funded, L&D is a low funded department. And in colleges, anything extra, you're not going to get paid that much, right? So we had to keep the solution affordable. So when we designed it, we had to make sure it is scalable. At the same time, the performance is good and it has to load everything in the browser and it has to be less cost for us. Only then we could offer at an affordable rate. So these are some of the things that we kept in mind and designed it.
Got it. And ma'am, from a technical standpoint, what makes AI Vagam stand apart from a conventional LMS or a coding sandbox platform? And what were the hardest architectural choices that you had to make or to make sure that it's scalable across multiple domains like DevOps, AI, and full stack development?
So one of the hardest thing that we problem solved was when we first wrote the problem statement and the first MVP on the board. I still remember the look on my team's faces. They were like, is this even possible? Has she gone crazy? Right. So that is how it was. Because I wanted the Linux terminal on that and I want the instructions guided. And as and when they type, I want the ticker to move on automatically. And then assessments have to be there where the instructions are not there and assessments people have to do it on their own. and score them and then provision them a certificate, right? So these are some of the hardest things to solve. And when we wanted the users, we wanted each user to have a session and the container to be spun up specifically for the one user. And all of these things were there, and course design, how the course should proceed, voice, images, and then the instructions. How do you do the validation, right? People can write code in whatever format they want, but how do you do the validation? All of these things, taking the user together along with the ticker and then along with the lesson plan. They can see the lesson plan alongside. So they can reset and repractice from the beginning. And if they save, the progress should be saved and then it has to render, right? All these were some of the challenges that we have solved. Some of them we solved like we using our experience, and some of them it took us like 3 months, 4 months for us to solve because the UI wasn't good. We scraped it and rebuilt it in such a way the user can understand. Sometimes the instructions are not good. We built a nice one, the instructions are not good, so we had to redo the instruction. And physically, when we build something to test it, right, it is not like a data application where you can go and automate. Each lab has its own UI. Python has its own editor. JavaScript has its own editor. Full stack development has a VS Code kind of editor. All of these things are very, very different, right? And if you have to test a lab, you have to go through all the modules for you to test it. So these are some of the challenges that we had. Most importantly, we wanted uptime, we wanted ease of use, we want to be able to offer at a lower cost.
Got it. You have covered three most important things for a product to scale fast.
Yeah.
Ma'am, let's talk about customer discovery. Like, how did you validate early product market fit? And what kind of teams or companies first adopted this product, that is AI Vaga? And what measurable business impact that did they experience in terms of onboarding speed, release quality, and developer ramp up time?
See, one of the things that we are doing, we pivoted a couple. A startup cannot function without pivoting, right? So we took batches and then we built the platform. So initially we sold to startups and then corporates. We also went in person to take classes using the labs, because when you're taking classes, one comes with Mac, one comes with Windows, and one comes with some other version of Ubuntu on his laptop. So each command is going to be different, even if the technology is going to be same for them to work on different laptops, right? So when we enabled these labs on everybody's laptops, and then they can, when the teacher is teaching, the same thing the student is also doing, right? So it becomes very easy. One of the challenges we found with the corporate was, one, most of the leaders in terms of what they want to sponsor for the people in the organizations, they are willing to sponsor. And the point is, if you are not there, because the person is also busy, so it was a challenge for them to do something on their own in their free time, because anyways they're earning. This was one challenge that we had. They want to upskill, but they cannot find time. So in those cases, we took the classes ourselves, right? When we approached colleges were all impressed with the system and everything, but they wanted it for free. So, and another thing is that if you call the general public for them to be upskilled, what happened was they are thinking that, okay, I paid the money, so I will get the job. So they're not curious on learning, right? This was some of the challenges that we had. So what we did was, we have our metrics in terms of how many people we help, rather than this. One of the major successes where we have seen is people are getting laid off left, right, center, 1 to 3 years, right? The reason could be they don't know stuff. They could not learn. The really good guys the startups got shut down. Large companies hired a lot of people during COVID and they were let go. So this was a good market for us. So what we did was, we interviewed those people first to look for potential. We don't give coding test or anything, but we ask them to solve a logical problem. And then we ask them to write pseudocode so as to understand, okay, the person is responsive. We observe a lot of things, whether the person will come regularly. Diligence is the first thing that we look for. And once we see the candidate is good, we put them on the platform 4 to 6 weeks to train, and then we place one of our own projects. So what we are doing today, we pivoted to the current status. We are automating HR tech, ed tech, and consulting. So that is what we are doing.
And when we talk about the training and software acceleration space, ma'am, it's usually considered to be very crowded. So how does TopGrep structure its business model between platform subscriptions, consulting, and MVP delivery services to ensure there is a recurring value and there is a stickiness amongst the customers as well?
One of the thing is we know we could do a lot of stuff. When you start doing consulting IT services, the sky is the limit, right? You can do anything under that. And one of the most interesting thing that we are doing is AI solutions for people, right? And for someone to learn AI, when we are training full stack development, we are training them with the AI, right? For example, we have 7 labs in the full stack development. What they go through is first is JavaScript 3 labs because beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Then they learn GitHub, how to use a repository. Then we teach them backend. In the backend, what we do is we teach them Node.js, how to set it up, and then how to write backend APIs, how to model your database and connect, and how to deploy them and how to test them. All of the components, including Postman-like structure, is within the labs. So they don't have to jump here and there. And all of them are how to set up cores, how to set up security for your backend services, how to do JWT token for your authentication. All of them are built in the labs. They have to follow the instruction and do it, right? And then what we do is we build the front end with React. The routers and everything are there. So they could call their own APIs they've done in the previous lab and then take them and render them on the UI and deploy them on the cloud. This is what we teach completely. So these 7 labs teach them entirely full stack development. So they can practice if they don't know, like some things they've skipped, they wanted to see the climax at the end and they want to redo it, they can do it. Apart from that, what sets us apart is we have built capstone projects which you can practice from the browser. There is a small to-do application which helps you to build a to-do application using backend and frontend that you have learned. And we have given assessments for the labs as well, even for full stack. And secondly, there are 7 capstone projects like that. For example, you want to use a GenAI API and build an application, right? How do you call them? How do you set up your backend, front end? Startup Idea Accelerator is the application they will be building using Capstone. And right out of college, if you want to do something, payment gateway integration, right? This is also a Capstone project. So what we do is we teach them how to integrate a payment gateway. Again, build a small front end and a back end for them to have the payment button and go through it. And similarly, we have a live flight API. You can build a map and you can see where exactly a flight that is given in real time. So they're going to build that, right? And we have also a lot of times we use libraries, SDKs, and all these stuff in our coding. So we have a capstone project for that: speech to text, voice to text, SDK integration. Using that, they will be building a small application. Interview practice is what they will be building. So these are all real-time applications. Even if you learn the lab, by the time you finish all the capstone projects, you would be gathering a bunch of knowledge, right? So that is why we are saying in 4 to 6 weeks, you can learn end to end what happens in a company when you join. So all of these, we have given it to them. So this is how we also tell the people who are coming in, and we have scholars coming in taking classes from our base, and we have an office in Pune. My partner is in Pune, so he also takes care of the scholars and all the stuff, going to colleges and stuff. And we also have done faculty development programs, because if the faculty is trained, then the faculty can take it to the students, because they don't know how the industry, they have not spent a day in the industry, right? So for them, it will be very, it should be giving them an excitement for them to see how a full stack application is being built. So we have seen some of the, like in any class, the top 5% will always finish all of them. So it holds good for the staff as well. But the 5% has been really good because they have taken it to the students. So that is how we are closing the cycle. Because when people know, when they come to our office, we tell them, don't put a timeline on you. For some people, we start from variables. For some people, they already know something. We have to teach them building applications. Depending on where they start, 5 to 8 to 12 months is what we give them the timeline for them to get placed. That is what we do.
Right. And ma'am, just a side question I was thinking, with all this AI coming up in the development space, do you think people still have to learn right from the basics, like the entire thing, or they have to be trained mostly on the prompts and all those things? Like,
eventually, there will be a day well, like how we are using calculator, we may be able to prompt it and build a full application. But today it is not possible, right? Especially when we work with our enterprise customers, their legacy code is there been for so long, right? One of the simplest example I can give you is, let's say I'm writing a date function. So when I'm designing a system, what I will be doing is, I know I have written a function. If I want a date and time, I will be using that. And the same thing can go ahead and take care of time zones, whatever date and time format that you want, or daylight saving, all of that it could take care because I've written a comprehensive one. Wherever I'm writing code, I'll be calling the same thing. Now, this is very efficient, right? If I'm doing AI, I don't know how to design. I generated the code. And then every time there is a date, I will generate the code and the code will be different. So my code will be kitschy in that way, right? Everywhere date and time comes, I will have different functions, and something breaks. Now I have to go and fix in that many places. First, I need to know where it is used for me to go and fix. But if you write a common thing, we know like if we fix there, it gets taken care across, right? So that is why I call coding versus engineering. It's very different.
Coding versus engineering. And you promise MVP delivery in 16 weeks, ma'am, like which basically requires extreme alignment between product engineering and DevOps. So what are those internal processes or operating cadences have you institutionalized to make that consistently achievable?
One of the things is I've been working with product companies all along my career, barring a few service organizations. So I've seen both sides of the wall, right? So one of the most important thing for a product is to make sure the top use cases to raise as a cream. If you have to make money, for example, when we built Ivagam, we had to showcase that in 2 weeks. So we built a prototype in 2 weeks and we also got the grant from AIC Bihar. So with the experience that we have also trained the team. The team has been with us from day one. So when they taught the same thing, now they're building the same thing. These people are also training their incoming people. So we know like how to segregate the top. When it's MVP, we know earlier days we built for people who are in tech. If you're building for enterprise, right? Now everybody wants to build. The difference is in the customers. The customers, some people are non-tech and they have seen this AI generation and stuff. So some people have even called me saying, I have generated something and kept, can you deploy and make it work? You just don't have to do anything. But they're not understanding it is not that easy, right? They're saying everything I have generated, you just have to deploy it. So when we do the MVP, that is what we tell them. So if we sign up a customer, after spending so much of money in acquiring a customer, we want the customer to churn because it is not working. So whatever the MVP is, so we identify the base use cases and we design it thoroughly. And then we make sure we build, and then every Thursday we do a demo. So that way we know like we are aligning to whatever the customer is wanting. And then we finish the coding just 2 weeks before whatever we have promised, right? Because we want to give them some time for them to go ahead and do it. And also with my experience in the SaaS building, we have built some cut short templates and things like that. We use them because it's going to be the same when you build an MVP, right? So some of the shortcuts we have done and some of them we custom build for people. And we've been building this so people are also experienced. So it becomes easier for us to deliver it in 12 to 16 weeks.
How does your customer profile looks like? What are the main segments in which you're serving?
Some of them are startup founders who always keep asking me for Rene, you have somebody trained, I want to hire them. So we give them. And some of our customers are colleges, training institutes. We partner with training institutes. We have partnered with training institutes and delivered to colleges like VIT, MKU, Madurai Kamaraj University, Presidency University, and all of these things. And primarily our large customers bases from IT services where we have large enterprise customers. Some of them are US customers. So we have variety of customers. And we have scholars coming into our office and learning.
As I can see that AI is at the core of your proposition, both in how, so AI Vegem trains engineers and how you help client build products. What are some of the concrete examples where AI has improved the developer experience or reduced human bottlenecks in training or delivery?
So one of the things I can say in learning, it accelerates a lot of things. For the scholar, the way we have built the AI, it accelerates the learning for the scholar. And second thing is that when developer is doing a problem solving, earlier we had to partner with some senior member. Now your AI is your sounding board, right? But we have always told the people not to use the code as is from whatever the AI that is generating. So it is very important for us to know that we have to write the code because it is not something we're doing from the scratch. We are iteratively, so performance, everything, cost, and number of times we hit the API to the cloud to get the data, the volume of data, and how many times you have to go to the server. When you spin a container, how long should you run it? And if you can do it on the client, it would save a lot of cost. And all of these things goes into the discussion. And by the time the design is done, the person knows, okay, this is what they should do, this is what they should not do. So AI helps them in that way for creating the design and stuff like that, not the UI design, as in the actual problem solving, because we don't have a feature parity platform which offers what we are offering. So most of the problem, we have even been patented on one of the things on the platform. So ideation will result in patent only if you do it on your own. So it's very important for us to solve it. And the other thing is, when we do it for customers, we do solution around their data. So yeah, that way it is useful for the customer because they can leverage their data for some of the AI use cases that they have.
And you have been working across geographies, like, right from India's enterprise ecosystem to global SaaS startups. So how do customer expectations, readiness levels, and success metrics differ across these regions? And how do you tailor your delivery to each?
When it comes to enterprise, it's pretty neat and clean, right? We used to think that that is like, okay, the customer doesn't know what you want. And after working with the founders and after working with the mid-sized companies, I know like enterprises with whatever the variations that we come in, it's pretty neat in terms of doing a handshake or an agreement. This is what you want and this is what we are delivering. Of course, there are some variations. We know like, okay, this is what will come. Okay, we always think, okay, if it comes, then we will also showcase in the demo to see, hey, maybe this is what you need, or maybe they will tell us, okay, this is what you need. It's a pretty standard one, right? When it comes to mid-sized companies, it's going to be very slightly different. The reason being, they now want to use AI and leverage it rather than people, right? Because they want to optimize their team in terms of delivering what they want. So that way, the expectations are different in terms of, okay, if you're going to do that, do you need really 3 people for you to do it? Why, we can give you a license. Can you go ahead and use this, right? So okay, we are good with that. So the expectation slightly changes when it even comes down further to founders. When we have a tech founder, we can talk to them and we know like what is the thing, and when we tell them this workshop you have to participate when you build the MVP, because you need to know what we are building, what we are putting in the code, how the design is there, how the architecture is there, and what is the platform that you are going to host. And we'll also tell you how much customers it will hold, how many requests it will hold. After that, you will have to either rejig it or you have to expand it. Depending on the budget you have, you can do that. That's what we tell them. But when it comes to founders who are non-tech, that is where the whole challenge is. Right? Sometimes people think that writing code is an essay, engineering is writing essay. So you want to change something, you can change overnight. That doesn't happen. So that is a challenge, because they're saying with AI also you couldn't finish. Okay, we can't finish like that because it is not going to be that straightforward. And we agree. Mid-sized companies do have a flat number, so we agree with the flat number, right? In small size, they want a Uber-sized application in like $1,000. They've listed all of this. They put a full-sized. They have asked somebody to do a Figma design, and they want the entire thing in $1,000. Because they're saying, okay, AI is generating. What are you doing? So these are some of the expectations in terms of price. And in terms of quality, everybody wants the same kind of quality, right? These are the things.
This is very nicely explained, ma'am. Ma'am, when we talk about top grep, it basically sits at an intersection of consulting, engineering, and education, which means that your people have to both build as well as teach. So how do you hire, motivate, and retain such hybrid talent who can operate across these dimensions?
A couple of our engineers are all MSc Math grads, right? Unfortunately, I got to know when I visit these colleges in down south of Tamil Nadu or Kerala or even in Karnataka, I have found that MSc Mathematics or BSc Mathematics is being taken away from colleges, which is a very sad story because they don't know what to do. I am a BSc Math grad myself, right? So there are a lot of things that I understand better because I have a math background, and it is very alarming that in our ancient India, literature and math were the only 2 subjects, and literature encompassed science and everything, right? So it's truly alarming for me to know that the math is being removed from the curriculum. So yeah, apart from that, so when we hire people, there are 5 qualities that we look for. One is diligence, proactiveness, attitude, aptitude, and then only talent. So based on that, because we train people and people who have joined us are there, and everybody is given a responsibility and ownership. So they make sure, and they are given proper training in terms of what they have to do. And we handhold them for a few days and then we tuck them. Because swimming or driving cannot be taught, right? They have to experience themselves. Coding is something similar to that. They have to dive into it. And when we prepare the people, like we don't just, right? That also shows at work. Okay, we are teaching this discipline to people. Why am I not following that, right? In code reviews, it will show. In code reviews, people, there are beautiful conversations that happen at work. So that is how we balance. And when people have to go and do consulting, we tell them, hey, this is something that will be good because you'll be seeing something different. The role is like this and the expectation is this. So we tell them so they understand.
And at last, ma'am, for all the founders and the tech leaders, listening to this podcast, those who are building products or teams in today's fast moving ecosystem, what is that one principle from your entire top drip, journey that they should remember when they are trying to deliver quality at a speed?
So first thing is that to have the right intention. If you have the right intention, then you will have the right direction and you will be able to guide the people in the right direction. So it is very, very important to have the right intention. And then make sure when you have the intention, purpose is also known to the people. When the purpose is known, like our people know that we are making a difference in people's lives because 70%, more than 70% of our workforce is people who lost their jobs and we reskilled and then we place them. Right? Mission, and when people build labs, I ask them the question to say that, okay, what is the point of teaching out of this lab? So we call it POT. Is the POT coming across? That is what we call them. And other thing is that we celebrate Teachers' Day at work, so that even though they are developers, they are engineers, they are consulting, they know like during Teachers' Day we cut the cake. So either way, in whatever place you are there, you have to share your knowledge and you have to learn to share because you can't just share it, right? So these are some of the things which will apply for any organization because that is what I have followed in my life. That is what I have followed in all the teams that I have led through. And I still have people calling me for having that kind of training ground for the people before they could go ahead and do the project. So this is something when your people are properly taken care, then everything comes together. Sometimes I give really very strict feedback. The reason is how you can't be nice like so long. When you think the person is ready, they need a slight nudge or a push. We give them that. Post that they come and tell me, good, you put me on that. I learned something.
And ma'am, last question is that, this is not a part of the podcast, but what are the different behaviors that you see when you have worked with millennials, you have worked with Gen Zs now. So if you talk about Gen Zs, what are the differences that you see in terms of their mindset, their way of working?
So one of the things that I have seen is they're consumers of tech. We were practitioners of tech. They know how to use things. One of the things that I see is they want to succeed on day one, right? They get very disappointed when we tell them you finish this, only then we give you the next thing because you need to know this before you can move on to the next step, right? It takes couple of days for them to settle themselves down. We have to be very patient with them, right? But at the same time, once they got it, one of the person even asked me, like the Gen Z person, like she asked me this question. You are building so many labs. What if somebody records a Udemy and put it and they get money, but you're not getting money? That is when we got this idea. Oh, maybe we should record our labs and put on Udemy. So ideas are just like that, right? So I love the vibe of the Gen Z. It's just that they need proper guidance for them to flourish and then bloom.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Very insightful conversation. Extremely grateful we are at Dawdle that you basically took out time and shared your insights with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rishikesh. It was nice talking to you as well. Beautiful question. Thank you very much.
And I will catch up with you, ma'am, in Bangalore. Thank you, ma'am.
Well,